Today, we're talking about one of the most famous people who ever lived, Marilyn Monroe. But here's the thing, we're not just looking at the movie star, we're going to go way deeper, into the massive, tragic war that was raging inside her, the battle between her dazzling public image and her absolutely brutal private reality.
And this is really the key to the whole story, the one thing you have to understand. Marilyn Monroe, the icon we all know, she wasn't a real person, not really. She was a performance, an incredibly detailed character, built by a terrified and traumatized young woman named Norma Jeane. And that character was created for one reason and one reason only: to survive.
So, to really get a handle on her life, you've got to see it as this constant, crazy balancing act. On one side, you have these incredible moments of public triumph. We'll call them the apex. But on the other side, for every single one of those wins, there was a private tragedy that was just as huge, if not bigger. And this pattern, it defined her entire life, right up to the very end.
So, let's back up. Where did this all come from? This need to build a whole new person, to create an escape hatch from reality. Well, it all starts with the incredibly painful childhood of Norma Jeane. I mean, just look at what Norma Jeane went through. It was relentless. Her mother suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, so Norma Jeane was basically abandoned, shuffled between foster homes and orphanages. She was abused, both emotionally and sexually, and then, at just 16 years old, she was forced into a marriage just so she wouldn't have to go back to another orphanage. These were the wounds that Marilyn Monroe was invented to hide. Okay, so this is where things get really interesting, because Norma Jeane starts to fight back. She doesn't just fall into fame. She consciously, deliberately builds herself a shield, a suit of what you could call platinum armor.
And the creation of Marilyn wasn't an accident. It was so deliberate, a step-by-step build. First, she got rid of the name Norma Jeane completely. Second, she dyed her hair that iconic platinum blonde, making a clean visual break with the past. And third, she perfected the whole persona, the breathy voice, that famous walk. Every single piece was another layer of armor, putting distance between herself and the girl who had been hurt so much. And hey, just a quick pause here. If you're getting something out of this, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, share, and like my videos. All the information in this explainer is compiled from open sources. Thank you. Now, back to what that armor really cost her. But this armor, it had a huge price tag. See, early in her career, when she was broke, she posed for some nude photos. Years later, when she was one of the biggest stars in the world, those photos were published in the very first issue of Playboy, and she had zero say in it. It just cemented her public image as a sex object, a commodity. It basically reinforced the very powerlessness she had built this whole persona to escape.
This brings us to the moment that literally made her immortal. A single moment of pure, joyful, cinematic magic that was immediately followed by a private hell.
And here it is, the apex of her fame, the shot from the 7-year itch. It is, without a doubt, one of the most famous images in all of history. This is the moment Marilyn goes from being a movie star to being a permanent global pop culture icon.
But here is the absolute gut-wrenching irony of her life. While the whole world is watching this scene with delight, her husband at the time, the baseball superstar Joe DiMaggio, is standing on the sidelines, just simmering in a jealous rage. He was apparently furious at this public display of his wife, and that very night, his anger reportedly turned into physical violence.
The marriage, it lasted just 9 months. Marilyn filed for divorce, and the official reason she gave was mental cruelty. That white dress, the very symbol of her worldwide fame, was just too heavy for her real life to handle.
So after DiMaggio, Marilyn makes this huge power move to take back control of her career and her image. But this amazing professional victory leads her right into another kind of trap, a relationship that would bring a much deeper, more personal kind of betrayal.
She was so sick of being typecast as the dumb blonde. So she does something that was, for the time, basically unheard of for an actress. She started her own production company. It was a total act of rebellion. And you know what? It worked. She forced the studio, 20th Century Fox, to give her a brand new contract with creative control she'd never had before. It was a massive win.
And right then, she marries the famous playwright Arthur Miller. She saw him as her intellectual savior, the one who would finally see the real her. But that hope just shattered. She found his private journal and read what he'd written, that he was disappointed in her, even embarrassed by her sometimes.
That emotional gut punch was followed by a string of physical heartbreaks, 2 miscarriages, an ectopic pregnancy, and the marriage just fell apart.
And here's the crazy part. Even as her personal life is just completely imploding, her actual talent, her acting, it was getting better and better. In fact, her most critically acclaimed work came when she was in the most pain. I mean, the contrast here is just staggering. On one hand, in 1959, she wins a Golden Globe for Best Actress for the comedy masterpiece Some Like It Hot, an absolute career peak. But behind the curtain, her addiction to pills and alcohol was spiraling out of control. And just 2 years after that award, she was briefly put into a psychiatric clinic, echoing the exact same fate as her mother.
Her final years are just the most painful example of this cycle. Apex. She gives this incredible, raw performance in The Misfits, a role Miller wrote just for her. The tragedy, their marriage is literally falling apart on set. Another apex. She wins another Golden Globe and has that iconic Happy Birthday, Mr. President moment with JFK. And the final, awful tragedy, she gets fired from her next movie, is humiliated in the press, and just a few months later is found dead from an overdose. She was only 36.
And maybe the most chilling thing ever said about her came from Arthur Miller himself. When someone asked why he wasn't going to her funeral, he reportedly just said, "She won't be there." It was such a devastating final comment, almost like he was saying the person he knew, Norma Jeane, had been gone for a long, long time, and all that was left to bury was the character she played. So when you think about it, what are we left with? We celebrate her for her acting, and she was brilliant. But maybe, just maybe, her greatest, most difficult, and most all-consuming role was the one she played every single day, the role of Marilyn Monroe. A dazzling, iconic, and ultimately fatal performance that she didn't do for fame, but just to survive. And in the end, it cost her absolutely everything.